We just had some technical difficulties there, but we're back with Dead Milkman Joe. Joe, what's your favourite song from the Beelzebubba album that works acoustically? And could you play it for us?
Hey kitten, what you doing? Wanna play the guitar? You say, what's that sound coming out of the hole in the wood? You say, what's that sound coming out of the hole in the wood? You say, what's that sound coming out of the hole in the wood? Why, it's the guitar. Hey baby, what you doing? Playing with your rattle and your plastic car. You say, what's that sound coming out of the hole in the wood? You say, what's that sound coming out of the hole in the wood? You say, what's that sound coming out of the hole in the wood? It's the guitar.
So, this was the first Dead Milkman album that I ever bought because I'd heard a bunch of songs over the years and I'd heard Punk Rock Girl before, but it was hearing it on the Tony Hawk game over and over, which was the reason that I decided that I had to own everything the band had ever put out. Can you talk a little bit about how they reached out to you to get that song?
I remember getting an email asking for permission from the administrator of our publishing company. Our publishing company, Golf Pro Music, was ours, but we didn't do any of the administrative work for it. We had one of those deals where you give somebody a percentage, the company a percentage. I can't remember. That company was called Bug Music, and then they got sold to BMG, so it eventually became BMG, but Bug was the company I remember. So it may have been BMG by then. Court, a license agreement. We said yes, and that's all that I remember. I don't remember anybody from Tony Hawk personally talking to us. It's just one of those licensing deals. It came at a really good time in my life, though, as far as the money. But that's how it was.
Were you guys kind of stoked about this though? Were you like happy to be in a skateboard game?
Sure, I never was a skateboarder, but skateboarding had a lot to do with with our music fandom, because I knew a lot of people who wrote to us were skateboarders, and we got interviewed by uh, skateboard fanzines sometimes, and that culture was coming up at the same time as the hardcore and punk rock culture came up. So, and we still get asked to do art licensings. So that's pretty cool. I don't know. I didn't realize how big video games were until that happened. Like how much they sell better than our records sell. That's for sure.
Would you say the music on Brat in the Frat was medieval? Like the guitar riff sounds medieval to me.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Greek, but it's kind of I'm the Brian, the producer, decided to put mandolin on it, which is appropriate. I wouldn't have thought of that. The lyrics were nursery rhymery. They were almost Dr. Seussian, uh, the way Rodney wrote them. I didn't think of it as trying to be medieval. I just thought it was, I don't know, old world folk songy. That's kind of what I was trying to do, and then it ended up with a sort of like a Greek music feel to it.
Well, let's get straight into this album then. What was the story behind naming that track RC's Mom? It's one of the more wackier songs on the album because it's got that lyric from Rodney like, "Gon' beat my wife."
Yeah, that's a lyric that came after the music. That's primarily a Dave riff that became a song. RC Royal Crescent Mob, known as in shorthand as RC Mob, was one of my favorite bands that we played with on the road. And they did kind of this white boy version of punk. It was punkier than normal, grittier than normal. So that's where the name came from. I think that's the inspiration for the music. And Mob turned into Mom. Why, I don't know. And RC became possessive. It became RC's Mom. And that's all I know about this. That's all I know about the song. I kind of didn't expect it to make the final cut, but it did.
I do remember I used to skip that one, but then I just discovered a love for Rodney's cartoon style vocals, you know. But
It's funny because he does. It's just it's so over the top. It's hard to take it seriously. Things have gotten so extreme in the meantime that I sometimes wonder. It's an extreme song. Run her down with a lawnmower.
well, we should definitely talk about the song Stuart because that's one of the all-time fan favorites and we'll be crucified if we don't do that. Have you guys played this every single show since it came out?
Pretty much since it was written. There were some shows we didn't play it at, but pretty much that became a fan favorite out of the box. I imagine this song has been our first video, but whatever powers that be choose that approve which song could be the video passed on this one. We even had an idea how it would be shot when we were in the studio talking about it. But this song came about as a guitar riff that I came up with. Dave and I fleshed it out. I just had this thing that I was working on. Again, that same kind of, it's almost like I love the band Camper Van Beethoven who did this, they also did kind of like the ethnic music mixed with punk and ska and stuff. And then Rodney just put those lyrics onto it when we brought the song into practice and said, hey, we got this song, and Rodney put lyrics onto it pretty fast.
Do you know if he
That
improvised any of it?
I don't know. I remember it being almost that way every time we would do it. He might have, I would say it more or less got tweaked as time went on, but once it was recorded, it was fixed. And that's the way it always was. But the first time I heard the lyrics in practice is pretty close to the way it was still today. He seems to come up with things like in a spark. It's almost like, and they're really brilliant. And then I think you'll have to ask him. I think he might change things, and sometimes, I don't know how much second guessing he does. I've seen him do it a little bit on the later stuff where he'll change a lyric then change it back, but he usually doesn't do that. Or I might say, oh, I know the one song that we do a lot from the Welcome to the End of the World. This train, Kim Lynch, the song Kim Lynch. about the train. He had the line about bees in my brain, and he changed that later on. And I was like, I missed that line. What happened to the bees in my brain? And then he brought it back, but usually he doesn't do that. So I think a lot of it was, he had the spark of inspiration, came up with it really quickly, and that's the way he does a lot of things. So yeah, I wouldn't know unless if we had recordings of the original. There might be a line that's slightly different, but not really in that song.
So on the song Sri Lanka Sex Hotel, are you guys playing around with the timing on this one, or is it just genius musicianship? Because I struggled to drum along to it.
We had to be a little bit insistent that that's the way it goes, and we worked it out in practice. It wasn't the easiest thing, but we wanted to be more progressive than we had been on purpose. That's a song that came about music first, and then Rodney added the lyrics to it brilliantly, I think. He doesn't like to play that song anymore. I don't know why he doesn't like it, but I like it.
Yeah,
I think he's trying to be as offensive as possible, and it works for the song. It's really triplets. Like, we're playing off the beat. That's the part. Yeah, that's his part of we were persistent about, where we're Dave and I are playing in one rhythm, and the rhythm doesn't change. Like, it's, what do you call that? Three, where one person's keeping the four and there's a triplet underneath. Yeah, it's just what they call triplets. Three beats in the measure of four.
Well, Dan's favourite track to play live is Smoking Banana Peels, and I'd love to get your take on how the band decided to work that trippy thing in. Like, whose idea was it originally to bring that in?
Rodney had this lyrics written down, and then he just had the section where it says "Smoking Banana Peels sounds like this," and I think he drew all kinds of interesting patterns on the lyric on his lined notebook lyric thing, to denote this. We're going into a psychedelic jam here, so it was like, here's the lyrics to the song. I don't have music for it, but I'm telling you that there's something that has to happen here that's gonna be way out. So when we were writing the music, we took that to being, let's get trippy.
What are your lyrics on that song? Because some of them are kind of distorted and under the sort of fuzziness.
Oh, my lyrics, yeah, the stuff that I sang, I just wanted non sequiturs, things that just wouldn't make any sense, and I'd wanted them to be distorted and hidden. So I came up with those while we were in Texas. The day before we were to track that, I was like, I got to come up with something, because I was just making up stuff. I was just mumbling things all the times we were practicing it. I didn't have a set thing to say, but once you're in the studio, in order for it, I realized I had to have something real to say. So I was just doing stream of consciousness writing and on a piece of paper, the first things that would come into my head. And that's what got stuck as the actual lyrics. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just more of that psychedelic crap to pile on the song that makes fun of psychedelia, I guess. It was all inspired by, of course, Donovan's Mellow Yellow, which was supposed to be about smoking banana peels. So we looked into that, and this is before the internet existed, so we had to do actual book research to find out what this is all about.
I love that you said there are four me's living all together.
Yes, they were for me, because there's different aspects to a personality. And like, what would happen if that's the case? Yeah, we have to live together, or else I'll go crazy.
Well, we have to talk about my favourite song off this album, which is Punk Rock Girl. That's the song that everybody knows. Like, that's why it was featured on the game. It was on MTV quite a lot back then as well. Like, was it mostly Dave that helped you write the music for this one?
Yeah, Dave helped me write the lyrics. I didn't expect it to be a Dead Milkman song. Dave and I had a side project called Ornamental Wigwam where we would play electrically plugged in but with no drummer, and it was more folky. We'd sit down and play, sit next to each other usually, and eventually we had someone project uh, film onto us, uh, front projection, not back projection, but front projection, so that would be on. We would wear white too and have a white backdrop, but it was kind of, I don't know what, artsy fart, like art faggy. I would say I was an art fag, definitely. This was the art faggiest thing I could do. That I could think of to play in bars in Philly. And that was just one of the songs we had for our set that we wrote. It was written in '86, shortly. It was written before. So that was another thing. If it was a Dead Milkman song, it would have been more at home on Eat Your Paisley, um, time wise, chronologically. But yeah, Dave, I had a lot of the song written. I had the idea, I had the end. I just had certain rhymes, and I was tired of rhyming girl with the same word over and over again. And he came up with Minnie Pearl. He came up with Do You Have a Bow? I was like that line where I tapped her on the shoulder. I didn't have I was like, there has there had to be a line where I approached the girl, so he solved that problem. It was pretty much like a song with the song had empty spots that needed to be fixed, and he helped lyrically put them together.
What was the inspiration for the girl? Like, was there someone around at the time that was a punk rock girl?
There wasn't anybody at around at the time. I was gay. I had always been gay. I didn't want to write punk rock boy though, and Dave knew I was gay at the time. Um, but I wanted to write a song that showed my goal was to write a song that explained punk rock, how you could fall in love with punk rock itself, but it was two meanings of at the same time. I wanted to be straightforward, a story song. I always felt I was it was easier for me to write story songs than concept songs. But and I had a conversation with somebody in the Electric Love Muffin, the singer of the Electric Love Muffin, Richard. Um, when I at the time in '86, he was going to Temple where I went to school in Philadelphia. Um, about the absence of punk love songs, and he also said there's no punk love songs that are really love songs. And I was like, there aren't any really good punk love songs, are there? Maybe there are, but we just didn't hear them in the scene in Philly. So that was another part of the inspiration for the song. I didn't want it to be so personal and be about a guy, but there was no guy anyway. There was no girl or guy. There was nothing. It was just from my imagination of what could possibly be. But all the places were real, so that made people think it must be real because I was putting real references into it. Like
Yeah.
those places, the Zipperhead was where Zipperhead was like a the place where you can get punk style clothing and Doc Martin boots and things in Philadelphia. So that's where you would go if you wanted to dress in the punk style. And the Philly Pizza Company was a place that sold pizza where we would gather. That would be our meeting spot a lot of times. And we'd say, hey, let's get together. Let's meet at the Philadelphia Pizza Company around 1 o'clock, and then we'll go from there and see what we can do.
Well, just before we touch on the MTV thing, Smoking Banana Peels was a music video that came before this one. Big Time Operator was before that. That was the second one you'd ever done, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember what the reason was for music videos at the time? Were you sending them anywhere?
Yeah, MTV was the reason. I'm almost certain. There were also video. there was a service that played videos at clubs, like in lieu of a DJ before bands would come on. So there was that, and then there was MTV. I think those are the two things I knew about. There's also cable, closed circuit cable shows that would happen around the country that kids would do, like Wayne's World made fun of. I don't know if you know, have Wayne's World over there. But there's that, and so there are reasons to make videos. But MTV was the biggest goal, I guess. The
But
record
MT
company, your Paisley on one of the late night shows on MTV that was a precursor to 120 Minutes. And 120 Minutes show they aired a Big Time Operator a couple times, and that was good enough. That was better than not being aired at all. So that's the reason that they put the money into them.
Did you guys find that those two music videos were getting a lot of play before like the punk rock girl video came along?
No, they weren't getting a lot. They got I kind of think the record company was happy with what they did get, but they were played at night on Sunday night at the late night uh, slot, a show called 120 Minutes. MTV didn't play our kind of music during the day normally back then. Punk Rock Girl was the first one that got prime time rotation, but that came out of the blue. None of us were expecting that to happen.
And then from there, you guys got to host one of the MTV shows.
Yeah, we got invited to host MTV, but we also got invited to play on Club MTV. We actually turned down Club MTV, but at least to our manager and the record company, but we got pushback from the record company, and our manager said, "You can't turn this down. They worked too hard to get you." I guess you can't turn down Club MTV. You just can't. So we did it.
I I would love you to play the song Punk Rock Girl, and I would love it if I could also play with you because I got my guitar over there. I missed jamming with Dan because had my camera on top of my guitar when he was playing bass, but I have got it. So if you could tell me the chords, I can actually play along with you.
All right, it starts on F. Stays on F for a while. Goes to D minor, back to F, back to D minor, F, E flat, F, C, F. And then it gets into the song on F. Sorry, this is so out of tune. One Saturday, I took a walk to Zipperhead. I met a girl there and she almost knocked me dead. Punk rock girl, please look at me. What do you see? Let's travel around the world. Just you and me, punk rock girl. I tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Do you have a bow?" She looked at me and smiled and said she did not know. Punk rock girl, give me a chance. Let's go slam dance. We'll dress like Minnie Pearl. Just you and me, punk rock girl. We went to the Philly Pizza Company and ordered some hot tea. The waitress said no, we only have it iced. So we jumped up on the table and shouted anarchy. And someone played a Beach Boys song on the jukebox. It was California Dreaming. So we started screaming on such a winter's day. Took me to her parents for a Sunday meal. Her father took one look at me and he began to squeal. Punk rock girl, it makes no sense. Your dad is some vice president, rich as the Duke of Earl. Yeah, you're for me, punk rock girl. All right, Jay, take the solo. We went to a shopping mall to laugh at all the shoppers, and security guards trailed us to a record shop. We asked for Mojo Nixon. They said, "You don't work here." We said, "If you don't got Mojo Nixon, then your store could use some fixing." We got into a car, away we started rolling. I asked how much you paid for this. She said, "Nothing, man, it's stolen." "Punk rock girl, you look so wild. Well, let's have a trial. We'll name her Mini Pearl. Just you and me, each fudge banana swirl. Just you and me. We'll travel all the world. Just you and me, punk rock girl.
I screwed that up horrendously, but no one's gonna hear me play it.
I thought it sounded awesome.
Yeah, we got the timing right. I feel like we were jamming it pretty nicely there. But and Dan sent me that pale cow sticker that you see on my guitar there. The only song that I would feel comfortable playing all the way through on rhythm is "Secret of Life." I even had trouble with watching Scotty die, even though I simplified it like that version I showed you. It's that came back coloured yellow part. Dan said it was because Dave was choosing some strange notes. And I thought you guys had just screwed it up and it was just like a happy accident that it came out that way, you know?
We worked that out together.
Okay.
Dave and we did, yeah. I really like the way that came out. I had no trouble with it because that's the way it was. That's the way I liked it.
So, do you think it's fair to say that Beelzebubba was the fan favourite?
It's either that or Big Lizard in my backyard. I think there's some people like one and some people like the other. Depends, I guess, where you started.
Yeah. I think it marks the end of like those first four albums that have the classic Dead Milkman sound before you guys started experimenting drastically like on Metaphysical Graffiti. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, because everything's a reaction to what happened. We were one of those bands where, oh, if we did something and people liked it, then we'd have to react and say, well, we're not going to do that now. We're going to do something you might not like.
so, on the intro to Metaphysical Graffiti, you have all those children singing. Was this like a real choir in the
I didn't know that
studio?
was going to happen, but I was a little bit disappointed. But they're just kids. You got to give them credit. But it wasn't my idea to bring those kids in. But I like kids. I was it because we wanted to do something like you can't always get what you want. I was thinking that might have been inspiration for where they have the a choir, like an angelic choir singing. I think I think that's what we wanted. We wanted when we were envisioning the beginning was that it would be like an angelic choir singing the beginning of the song, and it would throw so many people off if that was the first thing they heard on Dead Milkman album. But the producer Brian thought kids would be the thing, and I think that was I think he was right. I think he was right. I think if we would have done it our way, it wouldn't have landed the way it should have.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be fair. But because of that, we might not have ever gotten together if Brian didn't invite those children in to sing. Because one of those children turned out to be uh, a very successful music promoter who did something in promoted something in Austin, Texas called the Fun 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 Fest, and he was the person who literally insisted that we play the Fun 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 Fest in 2008 and got us back together. I don't think anybody else would have been able to do it. I don't think we would have come back under any other circumstances except that. And his name's Graham Williams, and he was one of the kids that sang on that album, on the Beige Sunshine introduction.
Well, which of these early albums would you say was the most fun to record?
I had fun on Beelzebubba. I know that was the most fun to record.
Okay.
This album, we for me, we were at our most tenuous point in our band history. I would say we were almost at the breaking up point right before we went to Texas. I was not on speaking terms with Dave Blood for maybe 6 months. So just the fact that we finally got together and to get into the studio was an accomplishment. And we did have fun, all said and done. But I remember the fun for this album was in between recording. The fun for making this album was playing role play. We played Car Wars almost constantly, and Illuminati sometimes too, but mostly Car Wars.
So those little moments in the studio, like Joe, shut up, and there's an aeroplane going by, were they really happening, or was that just like little in-studio skits that you guys were coming up with just to put in between the songs?
I think it really happened. It was recorded. We were in a different room in the studio. It was recorded in the same studio as Beelzebubba, but the studio bought the property adjoining it. Is in a strip mall kind of place. I don't know if you have those out there, but so they bought the next shop or whatever warehouse and opened it up to become part of the studio. Now it's all part of the studio, but back then it wasn't finished yet. But they ran snakes out and microphones into this big empty area, sort of like a warehouse, to get the huge drum sounds and huge guitar sound. Like again, Brian liked natural room sound, so that was perfect for him. But it wasn't insulated. Now it is, but back then it wasn't insulated from outside sound. So when you did hear playing a jet or something, we had to tell the engineer that we were hearing it so that they could stop. So we would wait for it to pass. And Dean said he heard it and he said, catch it, catch it. Catch it on the recording. And he said, I got it. And then started the song. And that we kept the beginning of that. And that's also another first take that I wished we would have had another shot at. But because I break a string and the guitar kind of goes out of tune, the original guitar, that you can still hear it. I can still hear it going out of tune because the string broke. But we kept it because of the energy of it. Brian, the producer, liked it.
I just thought they were like in between track skits because Dan says those improvised Earl tracks were because you guys didn't want to waste any of the tape.
Yeah, that was our idea. I don't know if it was our idea or Brian, the producer's idea, but it was somebody's idea, and it was a good one. I thought, why waste tape? But I think it was an idea that was hatched during the Beelzebub, probably while we were mixing it, Beelzebub, and we're like, next time we do this, we're gonna use every single inch of tape. We're not gonna have any waste. And also, when we had takes that we didn't use, he would tape over it. So it wasn't just at the end of something, it could be in the middle of a tape where we're taping over another song. But he would give us the signal through the window in the control room saying, then let us know you only have 30 seconds left because he's going to cut it off no matter what so we don't ruin anything after it. So that's how those got to be. I don't think the record company wanted them in at all, but we always got to do things, and it was if we did something and they didn't like it, we thought we were doing the right thing. I don't know why. I thought that they would have their own separate tracks and just be untitled, and they all got meshed together into another song on the CD. I didn't have a CD player until after that album came out. And I was kind of disappointed that they got meshed into the previous or song that came after it.
Yeah.
The very first vinyl pressing of it doesn't have it at the end, the very last Earl, the one that's really long, because it wouldn't fit. They would have to make it a double album, but we didn't have enough material for a true double album. So Giving Groove got the idea to take them all out of sequence and put them all on their own 7-inch. And that way we could have everything fit in order. So what ended up being the Giving Groove 12-inch is more or less the album that probably Enigma Records would have rather have had us deliver without those improvised bits. The improvised bits are all left to live in their own quarantined area, not to infect the rest of the songs.
Did you find that MTV was still interested in the band at that point?
They were, but they wanted us to play along with them, and we were not the kind of band that was going to take any cues from anybody else at that point. We were pretty much full of ourselves, and we were not going to cooperate with what they wanted. So we pretty much said goodbye, and they said goodbye. We had one, I guess, fatal and final meeting with some executive there and said, I guess we're not a good fit for each other.
Why
They also made us cut that video. I mean, I wouldn't have recut it, but they weren't going to show it at all. But we had to recut it to remove, because they had models of things blowing up, including a church, which I can understand is bad to present in a video now. But the director said, what if we reverse the image and it just comes back together? And then they let that happen. Makes no sense, but they let it happen, and they showed it once, I think, on 120 minutes. But yeah, we were not going to cooperate with it.
So you mentioned earlier that you loved ska music, but why is it that we had to wait for 5 albums for there to be some real ska songs on there?
I don't think Dean. You have to ask Dean. I don't think Dean liked that to play that kind of a beat, but he did. Yeah, and I guess we weren't really a ska band. I just like it. The ska song, is that Little Man in My Head, or is that a reggae?
You got Little Man in My Head and If You Love Someone, Set Them on Fire.
Oh yeah, and Rodney actually wrote that. I just heard ska in it. I heard there was a ska part trying to come out of that song. But it's not truly ska. Yeah, okay, yeah. I don't know why it took that long. I remember sitting down with Dave listening to reggae albums when he was trying to come up with the bass part for Little Man in My Head. Like, what do the real reggae people do on the bass? Where do they leave the spaces? Where do they play?
So let's talk about the time the major labels got interested. Was this before Metaphysical Graffiti?
Well, major label, if you call Hollywood a major label, it was after Metaphysical Graffiti. We were contracted to a 4-album deal with Fever that expired after Beelzebubba. Enigma Records was the company that distributed all the Fever Records catalog. They kind of snatched us. It was kind of like, why change what's already working? Enigma seemed to be doing a good job with us. So we just signed to them for like a 7-record deal for Metaphysical Graffiti, but they got put out of business shortly after that album got released. While we were on tour with the album, we were on tour with 2 other acts on Enigma, the Cave Dogs and Mojo Nixon, when Enigma went under. They were put out of business by Capitol Records, who really subsumed them and took the bands that they wanted. Not us, not Mojo Nixon, but they did take the Cave Dogs. So we were left without a label at all. We got an offer from Hollywood Records, and the vice president of Hollywood Records, who made us the offer, was one of the co-founders of Enigma Records. So we already knew him on a business sense, and I guess our manager trusted him. So we were led in the direction of signing with Hollywood Records. They wanted to sign us. There were no other labels that I remember being interested in us at the time, just Hollywood Records. So we signed a record deal with them that produced Soul Rotation and then Not Rich or Dick.
Do you feel that you guys had control over what was going on, or was Hollywood ever stepping in and saying, maybe you should do this or that, or maybe you should write another punk rock girl?
We always had complete creative control in our contract. Record companies always like to have veto control, though. They could veto things that they don't want to put out. They could also veto a producer that we decided to have. They couldn't tell us who to use, but they could use a veto power, I guess, to prevent what they don't want to have released, or just not release it. I think they pretty much left it to us to decide what we wanted to do. We're always trying to sell records. That was always the goal, I think, to stay alive.
Should we jam Secret of Life together?
Um, I changed the key, but I'll try to. I think I'll do it in the old key. Hold on. I saw a cigar-shaped flying ship. It landed outside on my lawn. You poked your head out of the door and said, "Hurry up, get on." I'd never seen this sight before. The world became a shrinking ball. I asked where you were taking me. You said, "Shut up and you will see." Waves of time, they rocked us back and forth. There's no doubting if we'll stay on course. We raced across the galaxy, away from all our ugliness. And I felt beautiful and free, out where the devil can't exist. Felt a burst of energy, hot white light poured from your eyes. We sped into infinity. I felt beautiful and free. Waves of time, they rocked us back and forth. There's no telling if we'll stay on our course. Felt beautiful and free. Now I'm no longer in my life. I've left all my friends behind. The letters don't get past my door. Don't wanna read them anymore. You took me to another world, where time ceases to hold sway. Computers contain the missing keys to life's most sacred mysteries. The secret of life is no secret at all. For secrets hold death and lies only the walls. Take it away. Secret of life is no secret at all. For secret hold death and lies only the walls.
You know, god damn the delay we're having. It's going to look like I'm so out of time. But how well do you think that album did, like, when it came out? Because it's really hard to
It
find.
did terrible. I think it was met with uh, positive reviews in all the music magazines and stuff that we wanted people. We never got much critical acclaim before that, and suddenly people are saying things like, "Oh, they finally make an album that's going to appeal." But no, it didn't appeal to our fan base, and nobody bought it. Really, it didn't sell at all. In fact, it got more negative mail for our post office box than any record before that one.
So what spawned
It
the
got positive
video?
mail too, but it got an awful lot of negative stuff. People didn't like the fact. People, I think it was abrupt that Rodney sang the minority of the songs when usually I would sing the minority. So we switched roles. That was something that I don't think we appreciated. People would not appreciate. We didn't appreciate how that was going to be received.
I mean, if you ask me, I think it was needed. I think we needed a Joe lead album. But Rodney's all over that thing anyway.
He's all over it. It wouldn't be the same album. It wouldn't be that album without Rodney. He's on it a lot.
Yeah. Do you remember why the music video for Secret of Life happened? Was that the label's idea?
As far as I know, they picked that track, and we used the same director we used for all of our other videos from Big Time Operator on.
Yeah. So, could we talk a little bit about that song "Silly Dreams" because that's probably my favorite song from that album.
I wrote that. I had a friend named Seven, and I wrote that with him. He contributed a little bit to it, but it's mostly my song. Dean could have a song about his dream. Why can't I write a song about a dream I had? Similarly, I had a cat dream that was like the one that's mentioned in the song. So I built the song around some dreams that I had, but I everything is not true. The way I put it all together, none of that stuff is true. Just the dreams in the song are dreams that were real. But dreams aren't real. They're silly. In that case, the song is silly. But for some reason, I like to write breakup songs at that point in time. I didn't have anybody to break up with, but I could imagine it. Like, you don't get into a relationship because you don't want to have a breakup, but you can think about the breakup as the thing you're afraid of, the thing that I was probably obsessed with. That's why I was writing those songs.
What do you think the inspiration was for Rodney to move more to the keys for that time around?
He did after we recorded Beelzebubba. He picked up the keys, and I'm guessing it's because he thought since there was I played the keyboards on the Beelzebubba album, but it got credited to the imaginary person Bucky Fellini for that album. If you look at the inside credits, um, and a lot of that was for me. Some of that was just serendipitous because there was a B4 organ, Hammond organ, in the studio, and I just thought it sounded so cool, and I wanted it on everything. Unfortunately, um, because the keyboards got put on a lot of those songs, Rodney thought we need to have that fleshed out in the live show. Somebody has to play keyboards. Maybe I'll be that person since I don't play any instrument anyway in the band. Why not keyboards? He took it upon himself to learn keyboards, and I was surprised when he told me that he was doing it, and I encouraged him to. I said, "Yeah, that's a good. We could have a keyboardist in the band, and it could be you. Why not?" So for the tour for Beelzebubba, at least the second leg of that tour, he very courageously brought keyboards along and started playing the keyboard parts that I had come up with for Beelzebubba. After that, he was his own player. He wrote the first complete song besides Rostabilly. I mean, he wrote the complete song completely and recorded it. The song "If You Love Somebody, Set Them on Fire" with keyboards and multi-tracking and vocals. So with keyboards, he got a sampling keyboard, a keyboard and a sampler. That is, two things together, put them together. could sample any instrument and play that on the keyboard. And then he was on his way to being his own song arranger, and he didn't need Dave and I after that. So the downside was that Dave and I got fired more or less from our role as the song producers of his lyrics, song makers for his lyrics. He could write his own songs. He could write his own music.
And was there any hurt feelings in the band by the fact that the album didn't do very well?
I remember me feeling hurt by the criticism, but also hurt by the fact that it do well, because unlike Enigma or Fever, who seemed like they would still do, like up to then, all of our records sold more than the previous record, except for Metaphysical Graffiti, and we could blame that on the fact that Enigma went under. In hindsight, maybe there was something else going on there. Maybe we shouldn't have blamed. Maybe Enigma went under because of that record, but that's not really why. There are other things going on behind the scenes with Enigma records. But the tone of Enigma, Restless, and Fever, of those companies, was they were in it for the life of the band. They were like, oh, a band could do this, and maybe that record didn't sell as much as the previous one, but we'll keep it in the catalog anyway and let them make another one, because they're more artist oriented. Whereas Hollywood Records, to me, was more sales oriented. If you didn't make a sales goal, you were done. They didn't give you a second chance. They dropped us after. Now, they did give us a second chance. They dropped us from the contract after Soul Rotation didn't meet their sales expectations. But then they lowered their expectations, gave us less money, and had signed us again for Not Rich But Dick. So they did give us a second chance, but that one still didn't meet their lowered expectations, sales expectations. So they weren't in it for it. They weren't in it for the life of the band. And not only that, unexpectedly, they took it out of the catalog. Other record companies may keep something in a catalog, but they weren't interested in having any more pressings. So they dropped us. You could only find our CDs in cutout bins or in used stores. After that, those two albums became more sought after than the previous ones, because the previous albums, they were picked. Restless was still a record company after Enigma went under, and they subsumed our catalog. They bought our catalog from Fever, and they were still doing repressings of CDs. So people could always find Big Lizard in the stores, but they couldn't find Not Rich But Dick. So it became a sought after CD for the collector who wanted everything that we did.
Which album were you happier with, Soul and Not Richard?
I was happier with Not Richard overall, because I had problems with how Soul Rotation was made. In hindsight, it sounds great, but it wasn't a fun album to make. It was a work album. It was really like going to work and not loving your job, but just trying to do the best anyway. Whereas then Not Rich But Dick was more in our control. And we're just having fun again. It was like a return to the way we made albums before.
And could you please play for us your favourite song from Not Richard But Dick?
I could try. It's not a song I had anything to do with, really. It's Dean and Rodney's. Rodney wrote the words, so it's sort of like. The group itself came up with this riff based on something that Dean described that he had a dream about. He had a dream about a band that was similar to the Velvet Underground, just grooving on a riff. So we just decided to do that. And then Rodney put lyrics to it. It went something like, she was born in May 19 years ago. This is the second verse I'm starting with. I was thinking, in a little town outside Buffalo. But the town folk feared her, so they chased her away. Now she's happy with a place to stay. I know that everything will be alright. What's crawling round on my roof is a woman who is also a mongoose. And Rodney plays a riff on his tin whistle. It's better than this. So that's the woman who is also a mongoose, just one verse and chorus.
I would have whistled along, but I can't whistle very well. But moving on to the Stoney album, did you guys kind of know it was going to be over before you even entered the studio?
We knew that we knew that we weren't going to continue. After we had the idea that Not Rich or Dick wasn't going to meet sales expectations, we had a tour booked for United States. It was our second leg of our Not Rich or Dick tour. Before we left for that tour, and this was in December of '93, Dean called a band meeting, and said he wanted out. We can continue without him if we wanted to, but he was tired of doing it. He was tired of all the touring. He wanted to settle down. He wanted to have kids, etc. Wanted to go back to school and learn web design. We did the tour knowing it was on our last, but we also decided we weren't going to tell anybody till after the tour because we didn't want the record company to know that we were going to break up. Because then they would stop supporting the record, probably. And they did drop us. We found out probably shortly after Christmas that we didn't meet the sales expectations, but we still had the tour to do, and the tour went fantastically. It was with the band Possum Dixon opening for us, and they had a hit on MTV in rotation, so they were helping to sell out the shows. I think all the shows were sold out. So it was fortuitous. The record company that originally put Restless Records, who now had our back catalog, wanted a greatest hits record and a live album. They wanted a live album and a greatest hits album. So they wanted to sign us. And I think as a stipulation, I think this is how it worked. I might be completely wrong. I think we were like, oh, you can do a greatest hits collection, but we want to do one final album. I think Dave and I were thinking, damn, Dave and I didn't want the band to end, and I think it was another way of just a soft landing for us emotionally. We'd have one more thing we could work on, and maybe we'll get that hit on it that we need. Didn't really work out, but that's how it came about. They gave us a 3-record deal, 2 of them being the things they wanted and 1 being the thing we wanted, which is our last studio album. So we got money to do our last studio album, and we got to record it at Sigma Sound in Philly, which is a studio I always wanted to record in. David Bowie did a lot of his Young Americans album in that studio.
Well, you mentioned on Big Questions that those last 3 tracks didn't really belong on the album. I really like them there, though. I think it's a nice fitting end to the album.
I didn't like the way they came out, and I think they were just like, where do these songs belong? Why are they just slapped on the end? And I've heard this from other people too, so it's not just my opinion. It's not that I don't like the songs themselves, it's just that they're just kind of like, well, they don't really go with the album. It's like, oh, now the album, these are just like, oh, somebody just put these extra songs on the end of it. But I really like the song Like to Be Alone, and Dave liked it, so we made it to be a song. I don't think we got it the way it should have been, but still, otherwise no one would have heard it. So we did it.
I think it's great, but the song that's my favourite off that one is I'm getting on a plane. Early in the... Oh, dude.
Have you heard the Corey Feldman version? Now that's the real version.
No, I've never heard it. I'm going to assume that I'll like yours better.
He gives it a darker minor key feeling. I was also in a band called Touch Me Zoo that overlapped the end of the Dead Milkmen. It wasn't like oh, the band's breaking up, I got to form another band. That band sort of just organic, just like Burn Witch Burn happened. That was Rodney's band. It just happened. Like you do things that you can't do in one band because you want to do them, and you say, why not do it in this band? Maybe that would have been a better song for them to do, but that was another mess of a band that wanted to change rapidly too, and didn't have room for that song anymore. Wouldn't have had room for that song. So it's just a matter of, I like songs. They don't always fit together. Sometimes you just have to realize that just because you like a song a lot doesn't mean it belongs with the other songs on the album. Sometimes you just have to have the courage to drop them off the album. There might be another project for them.
Did you guys miss the band in that time away?
I didn't have that much time to think about it. I didn't. Once we were done, I had to support myself with something. I think I got a job at a coffee shop that was paying more than any other coffee shop job in the city. And then when that went away, I got a job packaging videos, routine jobs. And I was in other bands that took all of, the jobs were just routine jobs to pay the rent. And then all my energy outside of that was spent only on making music, it seemed. I was like that much into it that I lived with the bands I played with. There's a band called Town Managers, another band called the Low Budgets that came out of that. These were just people I associated with. I didn't really have that many friends outside of making music. And all the other extracurricular activities I did, like recording, would be recording other bands making music. That's kind of all I wanted to do. And I guess it didn't leave any space for me to miss anything that happened before that. To me, when I think back on those times, I was just surviving and to do what I wanted to do, which was make music. I was also I got invited to play on the Big Mess Cabarets. Sometimes that was fun. I did Butterfly Joe was a project I did with Dean Sabatino, which came out of doing the Big Mess Orchestra. The Big Mess Orchestra band leader and arranger approached me with the idea of putting a band together with him in it to do these songs that I'd written for my old solo cassettes. And that band was Butterfly Joe, became named Butterfly Joe. And we put out an album. All this was happening in the mid to late 90s. And then when the 2000s came about, low budgets started making records and we started touring. So I didn't really miss the Dead, or even think that much about the Dead Milkmen. Occasionally I would go on to see what people wrote about us on there was a Dead Milkman free for all, some guy named Glenn was doing, and I would keep in touch with what fans would say about us that way. But mostly I wasn't dealing with that up until the day that I heard that Dave Blood took his own life, and then it all came flooding back to me, almost like in an instant, And then I thought, now there will be no Dead Milkmen ever again for sure. I didn't really think there would be anyway. I didn't think Dave wanted to. I think he was like, he kind of like put his bass away and said, this is it, I'm doing something else with my life. It's not music. So I didn't think we would ever have another chance at it. But ironically, Dave's brothers asked us if we would perform at a memorial for Dave that they had set up. They wanted to set up a memorial and have the Dead Milkmen. And that's when I asked if Dan, who was playing in the low budgets, if he would want to be involved at that. And then again, I didn't think it would go on after that. I thought, well, we're just doing this for a show or two.
Yeah. So where did the excitement come back? Like, because obviously you were all having fun again. It seems like.
It was more fun than I thought rehearsing for those shows. I guess it was after we played the Fun Festival. It was Rodney's idea. It wasn't my idea. I, up at that point, I was trying to do my own solo thing. Because the low budget's kind of, we didn't actually break up, but the main songwriter, the founder of the band, stayed in Germany after our second European tour, never came back home, and married someone from Germany and had children. Um, it was the furthest thing from my mind at that point. But Rodney asked if we would get back together and start making new music together, and sure, it just seemed why not? Why not at least try? And that's where I think the excitement came from the reaction to the performance of Fun Fest, and then the idea of making completely new music.
Yeah.
I never, we just wouldn't think of, I couldn't have planned it.
Well, you guys just came out with a great album that you actually sent to me through the post for free. Thank you so much for doing that, by the way. That was amazing.
You're welcome. Yeah, I thought it came out pretty good. I would say it's mostly Rodney's album, and he directed it. He said, "Joe, you're going to write this song, and this is going to be your song that you sing." And that's the song Astral Dad. He even said, "This is what it's going to be about. This is how it's going to be." You're going to write. I want the music to sound like one of your solo album songs, if you can. And then the other songs I sing are because Dean wrote a song. What did Dean wrote music and said, "Can somebody put lyrics to this? I don't have any lyrics." And that was Musical Chairs. And I said, "I'll give it a shot." And I wrote Musical Chairs because I sung on the demo. And then Rodney said, you should sing it on the album. You sang it on the demo. And the other song was one that Dean wrote the words to, and Dan wrote music to it after Dean wrote the words, I guess. Or I think Dan said he wrote music concurrent. He wrote music separately, and it just so happened that music fit. I think that's really what happened, and that became the other song. I forget what it's called, but the other song that I sang, Albert Square, which is a song Dean wrote the lyrics. Dan should have sang that one because Dan sang it on the demo. Dan sang that song, but he didn't want to sing on the album. So, and since Rodney's style didn't lend itself to that type of singing, I sang it.
Yeah. Well, again, man, it's a great album. Do you think it's going well? Are the fans digging it? Did the new songs go over live?
They do, but we only played 3 songs so far from that album. They all went over live. We played Grandpa's Not a Racist, Philadelphia Femdom, and King of Sick.
Yeah.
So all those are songs Rodney wrote, music and lyrics.
And do you think you could close us out with one more song? Maybe something off the Quiet Pills?
I'll just sing the Astral Dad song since it's Is he dead or alive? His children can't decide. His eyes are wide open as he sits petrified, sitting in a garden in a posture sublime, traveling through light to the time before time, Astral Dad. His wife is in the garden, picking spinach and green beans. He is an effort, working behind the scenes, searching for souls who need a helping attraction, Dad. All across the universe, eliminating the deadly curse. With the wings of his mind, he gives sight to the blind. But his children are catching worry. He will lose his mind. Searching souls to be a helping hand. It's just business. You know, yeah, I understand. We're on song. We're on Astral Dad long lyrics. You got the idea. Then does a pretty little solo. Yeah, that's the Astral Dad.
Yeah, thanks a lot so much for doing this, Joe.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. One of the
You got
all-time
your work
greatest
cut out for you.
moments. Yeah. Well, I'd have to get you back on at some point because there's still so much to talk about.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe in 6 months, like a
Yeah, we
doctor's
could do.
appointment
Yeah.
every 6 months.
All right, man.
How often do you see your doctors over in England?
I
Do they have a
almost never go.
huh? You don't go. You wait till
No.
you get old.
I'm too punk rock to go to the doctor
Oh,
at the
okay.
minute.
All right. All right then. Talk to you. Talk to you in about 6 months.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Bye, Jay.
Bye.